Well, I guess, start out with what's been influencing me the most lately, which is probably Bach organ work. There's an enormous possibility to produce a huge amount of music with pretty, with just one instrument. When you start working within the realm of just counterpoint and using voices against each other, and that's probably like. The way this music has influenced my music the most. I suppose I was turned on to it because of the sort of just the capacity for one person to make just an enormous amount of music. It's just one instrument, but it sounds so huge because there's so many different voices and so many different things going on at the same time. It's sort of anticipated. It's almost like the meters or something like that. It's like that's what excited me so much about this fugue, and like made me really appreciate it so much because of all these anticipations like that are written in the music. The comes in on 4, on beat 4. That's on the 4. It's just this is all one person playing, and it's written for one person, and it's terribly exciting. And the way that this fugue develops or starts is just like it's like the simplest, it's like nothing. It's nothing. It's nothing. And then what you get at it out of the end is just like this enormous cathedral. It's great. A lot of people will listen to this and be like, it is whatever. It's ancient history, but it has a lot to do with what's going on now, and it's what we miss. The counterpoint is what we miss, and tend to kind of brush over as we're getting into more and more electronic music and ways to make these great soundscapes. We kind of forget about the fact that about just music as pure music, just as pure tones, and how the tones interact. Counterpoint is timeless. Those rules of harmony were developed over hundreds and hundreds of years. I'm trying to find a sort of a way to use counterpoint that doesn't sound like the church. A way to use counterpoint that's modern and involved, that uses modern tonality. I've kind of been really interested in discovering it and discovering what's relevant to modern times with it, I guess. A little church bell.
Oh yeah. Definitely one of the happiest moments in terms of my experience with music being performed live in a sort of interactive environment. Actually occurred in Disney World, and I guess it probably would have been, I don't know, 1982 or something, 83 maybe. I went with my parents and my younger brother, and we were taking a respite from just like the afternoon sun, and went into a lounge that I guess is part of the now maybe defunct modern section of Disney World. I think that it's getting a makeover now, but it had a lot of like rocket ship themes and sort of like 50s era, like NASA robot figures. There was a somehow space-age themed lounge and restaurant. There were tables and chairs in the typical sort of recessed living room vibe. There was a jazz band that was, you know, performing, but it seems at around a time when switched on Bach and like adaptations of classical pieces was popular, using new technology or relatively unfamiliar instruments. I believe it was a three-piece group. There was a drummer and a keyboardist. I think it was a two-piece. I think it was just that. It was just total brain music, cakewalk, and, you know, weird Schubert adaptations, and being able to experience that live in, you know, Orlando, Florida, or wherever that was, with my parents, you know, having like a cheeseburger and a Coke, was pretty mind-blowing. I just remember my brother and I just being like, yes, like being so excited.
It was in, I think, 1978, 1979. I was playing in Paris, France. I was doing a concert with Don Cherry, great trumpet player who passed away, and bass player Charlie Hayden, my friend Adam Rudolph, who's on percussion, and a great percussionist from India by the name of Trilak Gurtu. So we were doing this one tune that, you know, we used to do a lot, we used to play a lot. You know, it was like, you know, no big deal, you know, kind of a simple tune, but very rhythmic. And I mean, we had really worked it out, and how we would end the song and everything. And so we're playing, and I mean, the groove is like really happening, and it's one of those trance-like grooves. And lo and behold, I started to go into like, kind of like a trance, you know, state. And so we're playing, and way in the background, I hear Don giving the signal that we're gonna end the song. And it's this phrase that he would recite. It's like, ta-tita, ta-tita, da-diggity-toon, 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 da-tita. He repeated 3 times, and then, boom, we stopped the song. And so, I mean, I hear this way in the background because I'm like gone. The whole group stops. After we do this thing 3 times, everybody stops except me. I'm still playing out there all by myself. The group has stopped, you know, and then everybody in the group is like, you know, looking at me. Then you feel the sense that, wow, the audience knows what's up, you know, that you really screwed up, you know. And so then Don, he cues the band to come back in. So we're playing the groove again, we're playing it again, and then he does the signal again, and then that time, I mean, I stopped. And so afterwards, we were backstage, and Don, he came up to me and he said, oh, so I see you like to go into kind of like that trance thing, huh? And he said, that's cool and everything, but you still have to be aware. You know, you still have to exercise your awareness. And that was all he said. That was all he said. But that's been a life lesson for me, not just a lesson in music, but a life lesson for me, that one incident. You know, you can do a lot of different things, but still in life you have to be aware. You know, you have to take note, you know, of what's happening around you, you know, what's going by you. You know, you have to take note of what you might be feeling, what you might be experiencing, you know, in that moment. Don't just space out in life, but really be aware, be mindful, you know, of what's happening. So I'd say that's an experience that has held fast with me for, I mean, a long time. You know, it's still with me. And sometimes when I really think about it, I still feel, you know, that moment of of embarrassment, like when everybody stopped and I was still going. That lesson of awareness and mindfulness that Don Cherry gave me was very profound. You know, it was very, very profound.
I was in high school and I didn't really listen to music, or I listened to music that was on the radio, but I didn't buy any records or anything. And then one night on Saturday Night Live, I saw Devo play. I didn't really know anything about punk rock, it sort of had entered my consciousness peripherally, just from like sort of sensationalist news reports and stuff like that. But what I saw on TV when Devo was playing was just something completely foreign and bizarre and exciting at the same time to me, and basically just piqued my interest in music right there in that one moment. The way I remember it now, having not seen it for a long, long time, I still remember it as being like in black and white because it was so stark and bizarre and unreal. It seemed like some science fiction film from the 50s or something. Or I just didn't know what it was, it was just completely bizarre. I mean, I went out and bought the first Devo album the next day, and that was my first album. I just listened to it over and over again, like not really being fully aware of what I was listening to, but just kind of like, how teenagers are, or that feeling where you just kind of like pour over the same thing over and over again and like try to pick up every detail of it, or it's like reading the same book like a million times or something, like when you're a kid. I was really into skateboarding and stuff too, mid-70s sort of skateboard culture. And it was this really weird revelation for that to come around too. Like, not even right then did I realize it, but later on I realized that all of the skateboarders in California and stuff were like listening to Devo and stuff also, and other punk rock bands, which I eventually discovered, But at the time it was just, so I had this thing, I had Devo and I was also skateboarding, and so suddenly those were my two things. Before that I just had skateboarding, and then I had Devo after that, and then eventually discovered like all these other bands, and then discovered that everyone else that was skateboarding was listening to the same bands I was, which was really strange, but good. It made me start to feel like part of something, and I was kind of isolated, like in the middle of the Midwest.
Okay, to put this little tidbit into context, I grew up fairly sheltered out in the suburbs. Rock and roll was banned from the house, and
we want to be free.
So I wasn't allowed to go to concerts for a long, long time, and I finally,
We want to be free to do what we want to do.
finally got to go see concerts, and it was like kind of late 70s, and I went to see like Rush.
And we want to get loaded.
Rush was the first band that I went to see, and I was looking forward to this event for a long time because I really, missed out on other shows that I really wanted to see, and I was just really jazzed for it. And by the time they came on, I fell asleep. Jesus, take me to a higher place. I saw a couple other arena shows, like the Kinks, who were pretty good, but it was just really passive, sitting down, far ways away. The band is just these four little people up there. And then in the summer of 1980, I saw Devo at the Showbox. Compared to the arena, a very, very small venue, and had a sprung wood floor. The whole audience was bouncing up and down in unison, It was like everyone was participating in this event. It wasn't just about seeing this band on stage, but it was, I don't know, it was one of the most funnest things I've ever experienced, and it was a complete eye-opener and a mind-blower. And this picture was taken the very next day. These are friends of mine from high school, and me. That experience was really, you know, opened things up for me and kind of helped me realize what shows should be about. I guess that's it.
When I saw the Beijing Opera, it's funny because we called it the Peking Opera at the time. This will date me, but it was very shortly after Nixon visited China, so I think it was really the first tour that they'd ever done in the United States. It was really kind of a rare thing. Seeing that opera just really suggested to me, you know, reconnecting, doing something disciplined with something really physical. They would just translate emotion into sort of a gymnastic, so joy would become a flip. And it was really this amazing physical expression. They would do things like have giant colored flags, and they would swing them, and people would sort of dive into them and flip over them in these costumes. It was just this amazing, you know, coming together of sort of athleticism, translating, you know, like physical joy into emotion and, you know, with music. A few years later after that, punk rock started, and I just really found the same kind of thing in punk rock, that you could translate your emotion into a leap. Since it was called punk rock, there was this element of like protest, or and we were certainly politicized in a way, but it was really more like excitement and liveliness and joy that was really the main thing behind it. Even at the time, something like pogoing was just a sort of form of play, you know, before it kind of became institutionalized as this, you know, slam dancing, or sort of this violent thing. It was really just about people sort of leaping around for joy. The chance that you could, at the same time, like express something emotionally, be doing the somewhat mathematical thing, and like jump around, was really what cinched it for me, that's what, you know, I just had the most fun doing of anything. You know, punk rock just became a really pure expression of that.
It's gonna sound really nerdy. It's gonna sound really nerdy because I'm really nerdy. I played Mahler's Second Symphony in in high school. It's probably the first piece of music I can think of that just sent chills down my spine. It's one thing to watch it, but actually being in the middle of a huge ensemble and playing it was something else. It was like an all-state orchestra. You have to audition, and it's people from you compete with all different people from your whole state to get into this orchestra. And it was really way too hard a piece for high school students. It didn't come off perfectly, but it was, it was really hard. We worked really hard. I never really heard any Mahler before then. I mean, my parents like Baroque music. Even Mozart is like kind of late modern music for my parents. So I never heard the super romantic, and it's big, you know, it's a lot of brass, and there's a choral part, and it's a big piece, very dramatic.
You come a long way, baby.
I will say that it didn't I didn't come out of that experience wanting to be a musician. I always knew I wasn't good enough and didn't have the drive to become a classical musician. The super intense violin virtuoso pyrotechnical style seems almost more akin to like figure skating or gymnastics. It never occurred to me that I could actually make my own music, make up my own songs and perform them. Like that came later in my 20s, but this was, it still is up there with one of the most powerful music making experiences I ever had. Just sitting in the middle of a 100-piece orchestra making this crazy, bold, bold music.
You come along.
The name of this person's Evan Tonsing. This was a really small, like middle school auditorium. I mean, there might have been 25 people or so there. He comes out, he's this pretty tall guy, and he's an older guy, very distinguished, and there, sure enough, is a little toy piano sitting in the middle of the stage, and there's a little pillow, you know, very Schroeder-like. Everyone claps, and he sat down, and he starts off very simply and really builds into like a Bach fugue. It's called a Requiem for a Shoebox. It was amazing to me. I mean, I was pretty stoned at the times, but just the one guy by himself playing a toy piano and making it really sing and become very complex and hold an audience's attention for a long enough period of time. And it was in the winter time, and it was a real cold night. And unbeknownst to everybody that was at the recital, while he was playing that, it had been snowing the whole time outside. So, you know, when the concert was over, I had to walk home, and I was walking home in the snow, and then all the snow crystals. The two really hit me really strong, being 9 years old. And that one concert really made me feel like I wanted to be a musician, you know. So that's the end.
Well, there were two things I was going to talk about. One, we recently got that Nuggets box set, and it's got the song by them, I Can Only Give You Anything, Everything. The whole thing is kind of a mess. It's a great record, it's a great song, but you can hear specifically where the bass player just completely goes to the wrong section and just keeps on going, and you know, that they just, okay, that's great, let's put that record out, or, you know, it's so cool. It's hard to imagine what someone was thinking. I'm sure there's other elements involved, you know, maybe they ran out of time, maybe they ran out of money, and so they didn't do it again, or nobody noticed, or I don't know. I guess what it comes down to is accidents and spontaneity and things that really contribute to what makes things in art and music and movies exciting. However that's arrived at, where that's allowed to just exist, is interesting, when also you have the opposite going on, where people are you know, going crazy, trying to, you know, make people sing in tune, and, you know, sampling, you know, changing notes around so people are, you know, the perfection side of things versus the complete accidental screw up side of things. I think it's a thing about human error and the struggle against it, the decision to release a record with you know, those kinds of mess ups on it is I think a great thing.
I grew up in a house where there were three deities in terms of music. There was Hank Williams, there was Elvis, and there was Springsteen. When I was 9, my dad took me to see Springsteen, and that was pretty amazing to see someone connect with, 10,000 people. And the Darkness record had been out, so that would have been the one that my dad had been playing quite consistently, if not all the time. And at the time, of course, I didn't understand much, if anything, of the record. It all came together when I was about 16, and I really kind of started driving. And my dad used to have a really great old Bonneville with an 8-track player, and in particular, it was this actual 8-track that I have that I still hung on to, that I would listen to incessantly. And the themes that were going on in that were a lot of isolation, and in particular, a song like Factory, which was on the record, was, to me, I mean, I thought Springsteen had written it for my dad, and it's, a working class kind of mentality. As I drove, listening to this record, and I would end up with not the upbeat songs, but in particular Factory and Something in the Night, and then because you could click the old 8-tracks, you could click, go over to Darkness on the Edge of Town, and even in Darkness, there's a line in there about Fairview, and I always thought he meant Fairview, Ohio. On Born to Run, everybody, you pulled out of town and, on a wing and a prayer, and your dreams could happen. But in Darkness, nothing, the dreams were not going to happen, and this was your life. My dad worked and my mom worked, and for me, they did whatever they could, and I think they wanted me to do. They were working so that I could have this opportunity to do whatever I really wanted to do. Whereas my dad had been that guy who had tried to do things. He'd been in search of the promised land. He drove through the Badlands. He ended up chasing something in the night, only to end up in the factory. I naively identified with Springsteen because I felt like Springsteen was talking about his dad, and that he had somehow become this rock and roller, and he could connect with 10,000 people. So I wanted to find a way with music to connect with people and to do something that I really believed and loved in. And it just drove me to kind of want to do what my parents were working very hard to give me an opportunity to do. This particular 8-track and this particular record probably had more of an influence in the years of 16 to 20 to just make me want to try harder and harder to realize a dream that I think had died somewhere along the way with my dad without him ever giving up hope. It's probably this thing. So that's it. So it comes down to this, and my dad doesn't know that I have this, but he may now, so hopefully he won't ask for it back.
The B-52's Wild Planet. It's the best. I know every word, every chorus, every verse to that whole record. I heard about them from my dad, and he was a fan of theirs. And my mother and father divorced, and I went to visit him, and he was playing, I think, their first record. And I was like, who is this? He's like, the B-52s. And I really liked it, so I ended up buying Wild Planet, because that's what I found. I got it when I was in 6th grade, and I used to roller skate to it. It became my life. And it wasn't even 6th grade. It was like up still to, now I just put the cassette in and I just scream at the top of my lungs. Give Me Back My Man is my favorite song in the whole world. It's like, I'll give you fish, I'll give you candy, I'll give you everything I have ever had. It's the best. I'll give you fish. That's a present. I love that record. I love the artwork. I love the songs. It was actually the drive, the drums. I just loved the music, everything, how, the women singers, how they sounded. I just thought that they looked so incredible with their bouffant hairdos. And I feel like that's why I'm gay, is because of Fred Schneider, too. And later on, like 3 years ago, I met Kate Pearson, and I cried. And it was so weird because, a week later, a fan met me and was totally bawling, and I was like, I totally know what you feel like. Because I was totally bawling too with Kate Pearson. I was like, oh my God, I finally met you. It just meant so much, 6th grade, It was the best.
I don't really have any inspirational childhood, psychological, Freudian childhood experiences with music. And if I had, I wouldn't be aware of. But I think what always kind of really interested me were guitar solos, starting with Brian May, and especially the Game record by Queen, which said no synthesizers. Actually, I think on every Queen record there was this quote saying no synthesizers used. And then Hot Space, they started to use them, and then they turned into, I mean, they were probably always a bad band for I don't know, indie people, but I liked them. The Brian May guitar solo stuff? Yeah. Yeah, I do really like, I mean, I basically like his guitar sound, which is, the guitar he's using is supposed to be built by him and his father when he was 14. Brian May's guitar sound still is, I think, really, really good. And I also liked Starfleet, and Starfleet featured Eddie Van Halen also. So there was Eddie Van Halen guitar and Brian May guitar battling. I don't know why I refer to guitar solos at all. I think because I feel a bit surrounded by rock people in this documentation, and I don't want to become too abstract, but to be honest, I just like sound very much. I can talk about guitars because there it is very obvious that it is a guitar solo. What really interests me in music is more an aspect of sound and something that I don't really necessarily refer to an instrument or a specific source. It's more something that is there and present and perceivable as a body of sound, and something that is complex and structured, but not really focused on a certain origin. It can be done in a more abstract but also more complex way, I think, with computers, and I think this is maybe why a lot of people now change guitars with PowerBooks. But that's all very vague. I don't have any proof for that, and it's not statistically, scientifically proven. So maybe it's just, maybe I'm inspired, and this is why I talk stupid stuff. I don't know. Yeah. But is the camera still rolling? Yeah. Duck down a little bit.
Should I say my name? Sure. Or I mean, my name's Gene, but is it gonna say it in the corner or anything like that?
Your name will be there, yeah.
Okay, then I don't have to say my name. Anyway, my name's Gene. I got into the Grateful Dead for a year, and it was mostly about like wanting to be cool. And my friend Ryan and I went over to this fellow's house, and just to give you like insight into how trippy and intense this fellow is, he had tripped hundreds of times already. This guy, Dennis Mikasich, was intense. He could like look through, you know, there was no color in his eyes, and he used words like thought sniper. You know, he just had that whole mystique. And Ryan and I were sitting there on mushrooms, and there was this guy who, as the mushrooms began to come on, and you know, we would start seeing tracers, like a vision. Maybe you can even do that on the movie, like. Anyway, there was this guy who just seemed like a jerk, really pimply, like he started doing the Grateful Dead dance thing, you know? I can't do it too good, but it was, what he was doing, it was like, he was really like a whirlwind by the end of it. And it, you know, it was sort of like he was using all the different parts of his body to close up. It was almost like he was creating a sphere that he was dancing, like he was a big gerbil in a habit trail or something, you know? It was the effect of the Aha video, where it goes between animation and normal. It had that kind of like flash dancey effect. You know, he was really like a magician, and it didn't seem like he was paying attention to us. And we have like, it was an 80s Dead song. It was like Throwing Stones, or perhaps it was Terrapin. It was one of those, like, even the music sounded like it was kind of ping-ponging in this spheroid, if you will, you know? So he's going like that, and then it stops, and then he asked someone for a cigarette, and they blew him off, or somehow he felt like he wasn't being given his due, you know? it just like the scales fell from my eyes when he said, you know, I've been up here whoring myself for you. To him, and maybe to other people in the room, he was doing this thing for our benefit. You know, it was like he was creating this mystical, magical thing, and I felt very alone at that point, you know, and scared. You know, that's when I realized that the whole thing was just kind of this charade, and I really felt trapped. You know, the Stones song Satisfaction, or there's a Saint song called Know Your Product, and I feel like the implication of both of those is don't buy these records. You know, well, I mean, and of course they are saying buy the records, you know, but they're calling attention to the fact that all this is propaganda, you know, all this is consumption, and that's why I don't listen to music anymore.
I couldn't pick one record. I had to pick two, because one of them is the record that made me start playing anything. Then the other one is kind of the record that turned me around, like in a big way for everything. You know what I mean? The first one, when I was 6, or when I was 5, my parents got me a phonograph. When I was 6, my brother started to give me Beatles records in chronological order. He gave me that Beatles record, I don't even know what it's called, didn't have a name that I knew of, where they're just like standing on the front, they have like the beards and the long hair kind of thing. And I specifically remember sitting in the back, my father's green 71 LTD, and asking my brother, what's that thing on that song that plays all the time? And my brother said, that's the 4-string bass guitar. I said, that's what I want. I said, I want to play that. And he got me one, which I still have. That's the one that I play.
And then the other record is
Ascension by John Coltrane. And when I was a senior in high school, I was at my girlfriend's house and her mother had it. And I didn't know anything about it. I was into like Blue Note records and stuff at the time. And I put it on and it totally freaked me out and like changed my whole life. Nobody had explained the concept of free improvisation to me at the time, but it was completely obvious what it was. You know what I mean? It was screaming at you that it was just people going with the moment and reacting to each other and stuff. I just think those two records, that first record, it's so hard to say. Like the Beatles record, I was just a little kid and that's what grabbed me, and you know, I'm happy it did. But the Train record, you know, it would have been any record like that. But it just, I happen to know Train's name from like some bebop records where he played with Sonny Rollins or whatever. And so I was just like, well, I'll put it on. But I think it could have been any record like that would have shown me that music, you know. But and then that one, if you know that record, it's like super extreme. So I think it really was like a punch, like wake up, you know. This is the new thing. So that's probably it, I guess.
1, 2, ready, go. It all started for me 7 years, 5 score ago, when I was but a babe in Deep Town, Mississippi. I had mud in my shoes. I'm just lying. Let me start again. I'm just lying, I'm lying. All right, then I'll give it to you. Thanks for coming to my house. I was sitting here practicing with my practice buddy, Salim, and then I remembered I was going to do this interview for Bettina. And the purpose was to sort of talk about musicians or situations that influenced me or really made an impression on me in terms of where my music was going to go or how I was going to really develop myself as a musician or as an artist from that point. One goes back to the very beginning when I was in high school. My high school band director had really profound influence on me because he made me understand what being a professional musician really was all about, and he really whet my appetite, where I first started to consider that might be something for me to do. And that was Walter Diet out of DuSable High School. I was able to see professional musicians. He brought them into the school to do workshops for us, and then I saw them in the neighborhood. So I was brought up around good influence. Later in my career, the next, well, not the next one, but one that was most important to me was seeing Rahsaan Roland Kirk several times. And it was right around the time I had also met a number of AACM artists, Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians, and they were doing some stuff that was quite different from anything I'd ever seen or witnessed or been around. But something about that music really struck a chord with me. I identified with it really just right away. During that period, I was really open and being turned on to a lot of new things, and Rahsaan Roland Kirk was one of those musicians, and some of these AACM musicians took me down, started taking me down to hang out. I used to go from that point on every time to see Rahsaan, and one of the last times I saw him was at the Jazz Showcase when it was in the Happy Medium in the basement. Rahsaan had just had a stroke. He was back out, and he was paralyzed on the right hand, around his right side. And that concert that night, Rahsaan played more music with just one hand on 2 and 3 saxophones than I've ever seen in my life. I knew I had to get my circular breathing together from that point on. Seeing a musician play that much music with one hand gave me no excuse not to be a good musician with 2 hands. So Rahsaan was a major influence. And then several musicians I really met around AACM, like Lester Bowie, Joseph Jarman, and Roscoe Mitchell, which were musicians that just totally wiped me out because of their seriousness and dedication to the music. Their broad musicianship, the number of instruments they played was just incredible. That put me on a road of experimenting